Okay, so my talk is about the current state of FreeBSD on Power architectures. It's not only about the usually used PowerPC 64, which is, for example, Power 9. I also talk a bit about the SPE chips used in, for example, Mikrotik boards or Amiga boards. So, yeah, a little about me. I'm Piotr Kubaj. I'm a Linux and FreeBSD sysadmin professionally from Poland. And I also work on FreeBSD ports. Ports in FreeBSD is third-party software. It's not, for example, kernel. It's not about compilers, libc, things like that. It's, desktop environments, but also server software. So everything that end user may actually need. I also got a FreeBSD Foundation grant for improving support for Power in FreeBSD ports. So that way I can actually test whether everything works on my under my desk on my workstation. And I'm interested in BSD systems in the whole. For example, also I like OpenBSD, NetBSD, etc. But I don't do any development on them. And free open source firmware. That's how I got into Power. Previously, I played with PowerBoot and OpenBMC on AMD 64. Maybe someone here knows about Asus KGPE D16 boards. They are quite widely used in community. Okay, so what is actually FreeBSD? It's a Unix system, not Linux. It is a non-direct heritage from the Unix developed at Bell Labs. So after Bell Labs Unix came BSD, developed by Berkeley University. Then they stopped developing it, and BSD split into FreeBSD and NetBSD. So it came a really long way from actually 60s, but it's not operating system with code from 60s. It's modern. It runs on servers, desktop, laptops, SBCs, single board computers like Raspberry Pi, BeagleBone. It also runs on Power from PowerPC 32-bit like 20-year-old Macs up to Power 9. So actually, why use FreeBSD? Why not just Linux? The port tree, the repository of third-party software, makes it really easy to compile custom packages with, for example, non-default options. Some things may be set off, some things non-default may be set on. We can change the default versions of software like PHP, Python. We can use a different OpenSSL library, for example, different version, or we can use different MySQL version by default. And it's really easy to just create a custom repository if you have lots of servers to use it on. There's also ZFS available. It's also available on Linux, but it's really tricky to use ZFS on root file system on Linux. This requires some extra steps, configuring custom initramfs. Yeah, it's not really user-friendly. On FreeBSD, it's really easy. On AMD 64, you can just click on it via installer. It takes a few minutes only. On Power, it requires additional steps. It's not as easy, but I guess it's easier still than on Linux. On Power, you need to compile a custom kernel with ZFS compiled in, and then you need to create your own install. You need to install via shell, so kind of like Gentoo people do. So create manually partitions, ZFS datasets, and then just let the installer copy everything. It's kind of hackish, but it works, and it's stable, even on Power. And another advantage is that there are J's. J's are kind of like LXC on Linux or previously OpenVZ, but it's much more mature. J's were introduced in the end of 90s or something like that, but they are still constantly developed. J's make it possible to run some other version of FreeBSD or some, I don't know, you can have some custom libraries, etc. And they make it impossible to exit from the jail to the host system. So it's kind of like para-virtualization. It runs on the host kernel, but the guest system is totally separated. Okay. The other difference is about development model. Linux is just a mix of everything. Someone just cooks it, and there comes out a distribution. FreeBSD is developed, all BSDs actually are developed as a coherent system with kernel, libc, everything is bundled. And if you want some additional packages, you can install just fine. There are some binary packages. You can also compile from source from the port tree. That makes it possible to use old FreeBSD version, but it needs to be supported, and current packages with new, for example, Apache server. There were also many benchmarks that network performance is better than on Linux. For example, that's why Netflix runs on FreeBSD, because they have a better network bandwidth throughput. And maybe about a little about some preferences, but FreeBSD is a little like Slackware. It's conservative. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So yeah, many people like it, many people don't like it. It still runs initd from original BSD. Yeah, that's it. What about issues on Power specifically? All Power architectures are BigEndian on FreeBSD, and powerpcspe and PowerPC 32-bit are only BigEndian. There's actually no hardware that is Little Endian, so that's sad. But PowerPC 64 is now Little Endian on Linux, on other systems. And there's a big push from companies to make Linux Little Endian only. Maybe not the kernel itself, but many applications. There are also some problems with, for example, Node to get it on BigEndian systems. But the problem is that users of PowerPC 64, most users, there are no companies. Most users are actually home users that mostly have old Power Mac machines. There are some developers and users that have new Raptor machines, but there are not many. The number is increasing, but it's still little. So if you were to move to Little Endian, we would lose, I don't know, maybe most of our power users. So that's why this move is unlikely to happen soon. It will probably happen when more users have Little Endian machines. The other problem is that such a move would be kind of difficult because we assume in many places that power is BigEndian only. So you would need to fix many if conditionals. Okay. And some upstream developers of many software believe that LV2 is kind of connected to Little Endian. You can't have, so they say we don't support BigEndian because we support only LV2. That is a myth. It's not true. And FreeBSD actually is switching to LV2 soon, but it will be still BigEndian. So many if-defs in code usually need to be written like that. And now we currently have if-def for Little Endian and not for call_elf equal to. Such things need to be fixed, but we can't just fix every if-def to be checking for call_elf because there may be some endianness issues then. So yeah. Currently, I guess this is the biggest problem. FreeBSD switched to LLVM a few years ago on AMD 64, i386, then on ARM, but there were no developers interested in power, so it still uses GCC 4.2. Along with MIPS and Spark. So there is some work in progress, and FreeBSD will switch to LLVM, probably 9, probably next month. So yeah, it will support everything, C++, 17, C11. There will be probably some rough edges at the beginning. Some things will be needed to be fixed, but it will work. Okay, so yeah, GCC 4.2 crashes with some software when compiling with flags like O2. And currently most patches are workarounds for this ancient compiler. But there are also many patches related to, for example, endianness or being a different system than Linux and OS X, because many software supports still macOS. Okay. Another problem with FreeBSD is actually that there are no code variants for FreeBSD. For example, there's some if-def Linux, if-def AIX, if-def even macOS, but there's no if-def for FreeBSD. I played a little with OpenBLAS. It's very widely used. And there are many if-defs for many functions. And as it happens, it can all be fixed if I just replace all checks for Linux to be checking for FreeBSD and Linux. Then it just works. Actually, that is not all, because Power OpenBLAS on Power 8 and Power 9 is little endian only. So we need to optimize for Power 6 and older. Okay. And another case, FLAC. FLAC. Oh, Anton told you, I guess.
No, I just know what FLAC does. I can guess where this goes.
Okay. Some widely known IBM developer recently added power feature detection in FLAC. It's awesome, yeah. But it uses getAUX_val function, which is a non-standard glibc extension. And there's no ifdef for other systems. FreeBSD actually has ELF AUX info function because it's a little incompatible with getAUX_val. So it was made on purpose that it has a different name. And there was no ifdef. So the developer assumed everyone was running Linux, or that getAUX_val was available everywhere.
So why is that only a power problem? I don't.
Well,
wouldn't that be common to all architectures, or is
no.
You're saying that in the power CPU feature detect. Okay. You're down to ifdef at that point that puts it into a power problem.
Yeah, I actually checked why AMD 64 works. It looks like they don't use getAUX_val. They just check some registers directly.
Okay.
And that's why it works. So there are also some stupid, I don't know how to call it another way, code problems like putting comma instead of semicolon or things like that. People just don't test on BigEndian architectures, and we need to fix such bugs. Okay, so with so many things not working, what actually works? Recently, we succeeded in getting Radeon KMS kernel driver. It supports Radeons up to HD 7000. It's enough for my 4K display. There's no acceleration, but there will be some work on that. There's audio via SND HDA driver. It's a common driver. It also works on the AMD 64 everywhere. It supports standalone PCI Express cards and HDMI DisplayPort from Radeon KMS. It works, I guess. Peripherals like USB and NVMe disks, they work. ZFS on root, yeah, it requires custom installation, but works stable. Jelly is disk encryption. You can have encrypted root. It also works. It also needs another kernel options like ZFS, but yeah, it works. But the one issue is that boot file system needs to be unencrypted, but that's it. Okay. And about available versions. There's the newest release is 12.0, and only 12 added support for Power 9. 11 is still supported, but still supported by the FreeBSD security team, but there's no support for Power 9. So if you want to try on Power 9, you actually need 12. But 12.0 release itself actually has a linker script bug, so it won't boot. Currently, to be released 12.0, 12.1, 12.1 does work, and there are no strange things happening, I guess. 13 current, which is head, allows to use the newer Radeons because 12 has only, I guess, driver from Linux 3.08 or something like that. It's pretty old. And there are experimental images of current that use LLVM. Those are LV2. There seem to be no stability problems, but many ports need fixing, so we currently work on that. There's one minor issue that 32-bit binaries on PowerPC the LLD linker in LLVM doesn't support linking such binaries. There are some fixes in LLVM 9, and I hope it will work, because currently those images use GNU linker 2.17, which is about 10 years old, just like GCC. Regarding the port tree itself, last November, when it was a few months after Power 9, some people already got their systems, and there were many developers more interested in Power on FreeBSD. So we can see that about less than half packages were built. Then we fixed many issues in the kernel, in base system libraries, in ports itself, and last month about 29,000 built. So yeah, it's huge work was done. Previously, Qt 5, OpenBLAS, Rust didn't work. Now they work. Other software that works, web browsers, Otter browser, for example, works. Other Qt WebKit browsers, they are okay, but they have problems with JavaScript. That's probably some endianness bug. So yeah, we currently on FreeBSD and Power don't have any JavaScript-enabled browser. LibreOffice works, GIMP, MPV player, MAT, close mail, mail clients, MU PDF, which is a PDF viewer, desktop environments like KD, XFC, and many other software. So quite many things work actually. And there's this work to switch all Power platforms to LLVM. It will probably happen next month when LLVM 9 is merged to FreeBSD. Clang will be used for compilation and LLD for linking. So we probably will remove GNU LD completely. And on top of that, we switch to LV2 together with a switch to Clang. PowerPC 32-bit recently switched to secure PLT. This switch also affects 32-bit binaries on 64-bit Power. So that's another news. Regarding GPUs, AMD GPU Driver, currently used for newer Radeons, works just fine on FreeBSD AMD 64. So yeah, and it probably will be ported to Power, but the driver itself on Linux assumes that it runs on Little Endian. So currently it doesn't even run on BigEndian Linux. And Linux users on BigEndian need to use the old Radeon driver. But there's a company called Hyperion. They manufacture PowerPC boards that run Amiga OS. They are not OpenPOWER, they don't run hostboot, pettyboot, etc. They have their own firmware, but those boards, those CPUs are BigEndian. They are not IBM CPUs, they use Freescale's CPUs, but it's also power. And Hyperion created AMD GPU driver for their own OS. There's also a problem currently with Node. Node.js builds, some small patches are needed, but not much. But it causes HMI's errors when running Node.js. So actually, Jeff told me about Gustavo Romero previously. Gustavo Romero, as far as I know, is currently working on fixing Node. And then we can get to build Firefox because Rust already works. PowerBoot Plugin is in work because we currently boot kernel directly. There's no PowerBoot plugin, which means that we can't have loadable modules on boot. On AMD 64, we don't need ZFS module compiled in. We can just tell the loader to load the module. On Power, we can't do it because there's no PowerBoot plugin. But it's in work. There's some loader for Power platforms that was done for PlayStation 3. And PlayStation 3 runs some old version of PowerBoot, so it's actually currently being ported to Power 9. And something about powerpcspe for Amiga boards. GCC currently removed support for those because it was kind of bad code or something like that. But it worked. It may have been not readable, but it worked. And there's work by FreeBSD community to use LLVM, and it will be probably working in LLVM 9. So FreeBSD may actually have better support soon for those CPUs. Okay, any questions?
I'm not familiar with the powerpcspe package. What does that do?
Those are Freescale CPUs. Freescale licensed from IBM the architecture.
But what role would that have on like your Mac G5? It wouldn't be used. You just build it. Is that what you're?
No, PowerPCSP, it's a different architecture.
Right.
It's power.
It's an architecture. Okay, so can we go back and look at the sentence that I'm confused? Or the statement. PowerPC may actually end up having better support on Linux.
Yeah, because GCC removed support for this architecture.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how that's relevant to the ports, but okay.
It's relevant to the platform support on Linux because you can run such, for example, micro keyboard with new Linux because you need GCC 8 only, not 9.
Yeah, how much use do you have of FreeBSD on the SPE?
Users, as far as I know, only some developers use it. So yeah, that's not much. Yeah, I don't know actually.
Okay.
Probably only a few developers.
Okay.
But there are many users of PowerPC 64. I can't really say how many, but if something breaks, usually on the mailing list of IRC, someone tells us. So yeah, we have users, but we can't. We don't count how many downloads are done for each architecture. So yeah, any questions? This is my email. If anybody wants to write to me, or I'm on IRC also. And if anyone wants to check how FreeBSD is doing on Power, there's PowerPC 64 channel. That's where most FreeBSD devs are. So yeah. Okay.
Do you have the users using FreeBSD on servers?
On servers? No. I guess no professional company uses it. Maybe some individual users. Because, well, there's a problem that after last Power Max, there were no easily available power boards. So it was difficult to bring support to FreeBSD, to Power. For example, Power 7. Only with Power 9 it became feasible to do. So I guess there will be some users, but only when Power support is in place, just like AMD 64. Okay. I guess that's it.
All right. More questions? Let me go down the path that Lance was on. So in the Intel side, what are the common uses of FreeBSD in the marketplace, et cetera? You know, what are most people using FreeBSD for then?
If you mean professional use for companies, there are companies that use FreeBSD. For example, WhatsApp uses FreeBSD.
Can you talk in the microphone for the video so that we can catch the answer too? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the question was what are professional uses of FreeBSD? For example, WhatsApp uses FreeBSD, Netflix uses FreeBSD. Some companies use it for base for their products, but they don't actually use FreeBSD on servers. They just build products using FreeBSD, like, for example, PlayStation 4. But for companies that use it on servers, I guess WhatsApp and Netflix are the biggest.
All right, any other questions? All right, let's give him a hand. Thank you.